A global icon, a legend, one of the best boxers who ever lived. He can only be described in 3 words.
I am the greatest. Is this on close? You tell, is it live?
Right now.
Everybody stop talking now. Attention. I told you, all of my critics, I told you all that I was the greatest of all time. When I beat Sonny Liston, I never again make me the underdog until I'm about 50 years old. Right. Then you might get me.
Talk about how big George Foreman is, how terrible. I'm scared for my life, how relentless he is. That sucker ain't nothing.
Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. The heavyweight champion is taking the mandatory 8 count, and Foreman is as poised as can be.
This is when I watch somebody like Ali, I watch somebody that's really the real deal, you know, and I say, well, then I know I'm not great. I want to believe that I'm that guy. My ego tells me that, but the reality of it, I love this life that I have. I might not want to give this up just to prove that I'm a tough guy, but Ali would. I always like to think I'm a bad motherfucker, vicious motherfucker, but that's a part of Ali. That's where he overshines me, because I can't understand a man that's really died. You know, and I talk that shit, but he the real deal. He'll die for this shit. I'm not gonna die for that. Ali will fight you till he dies. You have to kill him.
Planning on fighting this year before the year is out?
Well, I don't know. I might retire. I'm considering retiring. I'm really tired of fighting.
At your age?
Yeah, I'm tired. I don't have to fight no more.
You think you can retire before you have another fight?
I'm getting too great. I can't even fly planes without crowds waiting for me.
7 minutes late.
Do you think you might retire without another fight?
That's right. I don't like boxing. Boxing means nothing to me.
What do you like?
Oh, well, I like what all Negroes like, and what they're fighting for is freedom.
But you had an opinion about him.
I ain't scared of battle. It's gonna take a good man to whoop me. You can look at me, I'm loaded with confidence. I can't beat me. I had 180 hours to fight, 22 steps to fight, and I'm good as a girl.
Look how pretty I am.
Long trim legs and my beautiful arms and a pretty nose and mouth. I know I'm a pretty man. I know I'm pretty. You don't have to tell me I'm pretty.
I'm cocky, I'm proud.
You never talk about who's gonna stop me. Well, there ain't nobody gonna stop me.
I say what I want to say. Ain't no more big niggas talking like this.
He was a pioneer. He was a revolutionary. He was a groundbreaker. A guy known simply as the greatest.
I am the greatest.
I've wrestled with alligators. I've tussled with a whale. I done handcuffed lightning and put thunder in jail. You know I'm bad. I can drown a drink of water and kill a dead tree.
This will be no contest.
Wait till you see Muhammad Ali.
Oh, King White soap, white cloud tissue paper, and everything bad was black. Black cat was the bad luck, and if I threaten you, I'm gonna blackmail you. So Mama wanted to call it white male. They lied too.
I love being around him. I love being around Muhammad Ali.
You gonna float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. Ah, rumble, young man, rumble. Ah.
The price of freedom comes high. I have paid.
Muhammad Ali as this vulnerable guy lighting the torch in Atlanta, and everybody on the globe loves him. Black people like him, white people. He's a universal hero, like, but almost in a religious way, like the Buddha. But when he was in the midst of his career, and not just in the early bit, he was incredibly divisive.
Boo, yell, scream, throw peanuts, but whatever you do, pay to get in.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Cassius Marcellus Clay. He's young, he's handsome. They know it. He's a poet, a prophet, and many people believe he'll be the next heavyweight champion of the world.
He was essentially seen as a trash-talking buffoon. Every picture that you saw of him, he had his mouth wide open and was looking all crazy and out of control.
I'm handsome, I'm fast, I'm pretty, and can't possibly be beat.
He was a fighter, fine, but he was a performer. He was an artist. He knew not only whether he was losing the fight or winning the fight, but he knew when he was losing the crowd.
He put on a show before the fight, he put on a show during it, and after it, he was even better. He changed the way athletes acted with the media and the way the media treated athletes.
Well, my goodness, you'd ask Muhammad Ali any of these questions, and he'd soar off into great flights of either poetry or bombast. I mean, you never knew what was going to come out of the man's mouth.
I'm the greatest. I'm knocking out all bones. And if you get too small, I'll knock you out.
On one hand, he might say at different times, I'm Wyatt Earp, I'm Bat Masterson, I'm Moses. And then sometimes later when somebody would say, oh, you're Moses, you're Jesus, you're the greatest, he was like, nah, I'm just another nigger trying to get bigger.
Ali's hair-triggered candor often threw fresh light into corners of his life not recorded by the cameras.
Muhammad Ali wouldn't have a thing to do with women when he was a young fighter. Boy, when he discovered them, wow, did he make up for lost time. Chris Dundee told me one time that he handled 30 in one day. 30.
The night before they fought Joe Bugner, there was a woman in every room on his floor. And he's going from one room to the next.
What do you think is wrong with you?
What is wrong?
What are your faults?
Well, I have a lot of faults.
Like what? What's the worst?
I can't tell you my worst fault because I'm married.
Can I have some of your cornflakes? Oh, I don't want none. I won't take none. I won't take none. I won't eat none if you don't want to. Ooh, look at that pretty horse there. Is that a white horse? See? Now stand up. Look over there. Stand up. You got to stand up over that bill. See the big one? There he is.
Unbeaten in 19 fights and still known as Cassius Clay, his focus wasn't on women as he trained in Miami Beach in the winter of 1964 for his first title shot.
Virtually no one thought that Cassius Clay had a chance to beat Sonny Liston. Certainly Sonny Liston didn't. Sonny Liston was one of the scariest presences on the sporting scene ever. This was a guy who had been arrested probably 100 times. He was a strong-arm man for the mob.
I know a lot of guys that completely collapsed when they used to see the guy. I saw Liston knock a guy's teeth out with a jab.
He was your worst dreams. He was the guy when you owe your bookie and you didn't pay, they sent Sonny Liston after you. He was Dr. Death.
That was a picture of Clay on the cover of Time magazine. Liston dropped the magazine to the ground, looked at it, and broad daylight pulled out his penis and just urinated on it.
Clay countered with his own brand of outrageous bravado.
I see that barrel in the street, I beat him before the fight.
You'd actually take him on before the fight?
Beat him like I'm his daddy.
When he's getting ready to fight, he drives his bus onto the front lawn at Liston's house in Denver. Come on out here and fight. I'll fight you now, you big ugly bear.
Now it's a show. That's a sham. That's a publicity man's dream. Screaming, hollering, yelling, now I got you, big bear, where are you going to go hide? And the more he ran it, the more he ran, the more it became apparent to the big bear that this guy was crazy.
While Sonny simmered, Clay often turned his training sessions into the stuff of high comedy, drawing a who's who in the entertainment world.
The five of us were in this dressing room waiting for Muhammad Ali, and suddenly the door bursts open and he gathers up all the Beatles and he says, okay, Beatles, stick with me and you'll make some money. It was just a magic moment. The Beatles, Cassius Clay, you know, this new era in America. And then afterwards, as they're leaving, he turned to me and he said, who were those little faggots?
But behind the rough humor, Clay was engaged in private consultation with black Muslim leader Malcolm X. A veiled metamorphosis was underway. The butterfly called Cassius was changing his colors. Meanwhile, the show went on.
Liston arrives here in Miami. Muhammad find out when the plane arrives. Chased him with a cane. Come here, Bear. I'll get you, Bear.
At the weigh-in, Ali went berserk. He was stomping his cane on the ground and wandering around and shouting and screaming. And we all thought it was fear, because the classic defense against fear is noise.
A lot of serious writers thought that Ali was so terrified and in such a panic that he didn't know what to do except to scream, yell, chant, maybe hope that they would not allow him to go on that night.
Sonny Liston's eyes widened, because nobody knows it then, but the only thing Sonny Liston was afraid of was a crazy person.
That night of February 25th, 1964, Clay's moment of truth.
When he stepped into the ring, and he was so much bigger than Liston. I mean, we hadn't figured it out.
Liston wanted to give the image of being invincible to the point of stuffing towels under his robe. My guy was bigger.
At 6'3" and 210 pounds, Clay was also younger, faster, and sharper.
The challenger is jabbing all over body and at right hand. The best punch of the fight so far.
This 8-to-1 underdog was outrunning him, outgutting him, and shaming him.
Kid is moving, popping a jab, but every once in a while he stops and throws a right hand that rips up cuts under this guy.
Liston had the mentality of a bully, and when someone stood up to him and was outwitting him and out-hitting him, he just completely fell apart.
So now some magical moment that was similar to something that had happened in a couple other Liston fights. The eyes of Cassius Clay start burning.
Liston put an astringent on his gloves or shoulders or in some way that rubbed into Clay's eyes, and people thought Ali was quitting when in fact he just couldn't see.
When he came back and he says, cut the gloves off. I said, sit down, it's a title. Get him down and I put the water in his eyes, I'm wiping him clean.
Now some of the black Muslims at ringside start storming the corner because they think that the white devil, meaning Angelo, is putting something in rather than trying to find out what it is that he's got in his eyes.
Angelo's life was at stake. If he'd had to stop the fight and that would have been it, Angelo would have been in for a big beating, at least, if not death.
About those guys, forget about it. I would have took a shot at one of those guys that came at me. But he said, you can't see, I can't see. I said, Muhammad, run.
They're yelling from Cassius Clay's corner. Something got in his right eye. He's blinking badly.
I knew Muhammad had him when the guy couldn't do nothing with him. He's teeing off on him with his best shots. Halfway through the round, kid reacts, gone. Liston had no shot.
When Liston didn't answer the bell for the 7th round, Clay, at 22, was king of the world.
You don't give up the heavyweight championship of the world, the single most valuable prize in all of sports, because your shoulder hurts. He quit.
I took up the world! I took up the world! I took up the world! I took up the world!
The next morning, Clay split America in two, following Malcolm X by confirming his membership in the Nation of Islam.
Malcolm X was a magnetic personality. Malcolm X had welcomed him in. He's an Orthodox Muslim who prays 5 times a day, who reads scripture, who reads the Quran, and it was the beginning of the confusion about him.
Elijah Muhammad gave him the name of Muhammad Ali. He was probably one of the most hated men in America. He joined a cult that had been presented to most white Americans as racist, a hate group. These guys look very sinister with their bow ties and their grim faces and calling white people devils. But this just seemed nuts to people. I mean, this just seemed absolutely crazy.
All of a sudden, the heavyweight champion of the world is preaching what most people think of as a doctrine of hate.
Muhammad Ali actually said that any black man involved with any white woman should be killed. And somebody said to him, well, that sounds like the lynchings in the South. He said, right.
People were repelled, shocked. He went from being that witty, great, likable young guy, Cassius Clay, to being something that they simply couldn't cope with.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You'll excuse the fact that I'm out of breath, but about 10 or 15 minutes ago, a tragic thing, from all indications at this point, has happened in the city of Dallas.
We all was shocked at hearing of this tragic end of our president. We all were so shocked over the president, we just suspended all public speaking this year.
Malcolm X, you were involved in a controversy some months ago with your leader.
Well, I've been silent for the past 90 days because of some statements I made concerning the President of the United States, which were distorted.
They were distorted?
And yes.
What did you say, Malcolm?
Well, I said the same thing that everybody says, that his assassination was the result of the climate of hate. But only I said the chickens came home to roost, and which means the same thing.
You feel that we're making progress in this country?
No. If you stick a knife in my back 9 inches and pull it out 6 inches, there's no progress. If you pull it all the way out, that's not progress. The progress is healing the wound that the blow made, and they haven't even begun to pull the knife out, much less try and heal the wound. They won't even admit the knife is there.
And I had stated in a newspaper article about an effort to take my life back in January, and at that time the Muslims denied it.
Why are they threatening your life?
Well, primarily because they're afraid that I will tell the real reason that I'm out of the black Muslim movement, which I never told. I kept to myself. But the real reason is that Elijah Muhammad, the head of the movement, is the father of 8 children by 6 different teenage girls. 6 different teenage girls who were his private personal secretary. The one who first made me aware of this was Wallace Muhammad, Mr. Muhammad's son. And it was their fear that if I remained in the black Muslim movement, and this came into the knowledge of his followers, that they would leave him and follow me. A plan immediately was set in motion to take me down, put me out. And the statement that I made about Kennedy was used as a pretext to take me down.
Did you get out of the... What will you take to protect yourself from this threat?
I take no steps. I have a rifle. If anybody comes to my house without a good reason, I intend to try and use it, and that's all.
But then there was the split between Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X. Now Muhammad Ali had to choose between the two, and he chose the leader of the sect. In a way, he had no real choice. Malcolm X was the outcast. Ali was, I think, scared, too. He's a very young guy. He's 23 years old.
Does this split disturb you that has been reported?
No, what Malcolm X does is his business. He's one man.
Your leader is Elijah Muhammad.
Yes, sir.
You could say that he betrayed Malcolm X, put all his faith and marbles in Elijah Muhammad.
Ali was no fool. Ali knew very well that the nation had ways of dealing with its enemies.
Malcolm X had crossed the line. He had gotten into a dispute with Elijah Muhammad. You don't do that. Malcolm X was under death threats. Malcolm X was killed by the Nation of Islam. This was serious business.
Hardened by the reception much of America gave to his new name and religion, Ali proceeded to establish his new identity in the ring, where infidels were publicly punished.
He did it with Floyd Patterson and Ernie Terrell, both of whom refused to call him Muhammad Ali. They insisted on calling him Cassius Clay, and he just humiliated them and brutalized them in the ring. It was not a pretty thing to watch.
He says, why do you call me Clay and everybody else call me Muhammad Ali? You just an old Uncle Tom.
He'd pop Patterson with a jab and would say, "What's my name?" Pow! "What's my name?" Pow! And then he refused to knock him out so he could beat him up more.
He wanted to beat them up bad. Muhammad Ali is one of the great self-created characters in American history. And I think you have to recognize that some things that you might not like were part of that self-creation. To cast Muhammad Ali as a plaster saint is really absurd and doesn't give the true texture of the story.
We went to a grammar school in Greenwich Village, and we got the kids to write a theme entitled, "What I Would Do If I Could Meet Muhammad Ali." And they came to a classroom to read the theme, and in the back of the room, in coveralls, was the champ himself.
My name's Muhammad Ali. I'm the greatest fighter of all time. Just stopped Joe Frazier. Now I'm gonna whoop George Foreman again.
You wanna fight George Foreman?
I'm gonna whoop them all. You recognize me, man?
Yes.
Who am I?
Muhammad Ali.
All right, what's happening? Give me a shake. Give me 5. I would give you 30, but your face is too dirty. Are you shocked?
No.
Why are you not shocked? You're not surprised?
You scared me when you came out.
I scared you. I heard you said you want to arm wrestle.
Yeah.
Let's get on. Go. I'm leaving. That's enough. That's enough. Bye. Bye.
If I ever met Muhammad Ali, I tell him my sister's a real big fan of yours, and we always and she always pretends that she's Muhammad Ali, and she really likes him a lot, and I tell him I wish he.
What you gonna tell me now, boy?
You are Muhammad Ali. You want to meet my sister?
I'd say hello for one thing, and I don't really know. Well, I'd be very excited, and I would Where did you come from?
Where I come from?
I mean, did you just walk in the door? Or
No, I was out there on the streets and somebody said they want to meet me, and I just got powers like that.
Oh, what?
And now, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to see 5 seconds in the life of a kid he'll never forget, mixing it up with the champ. How about that?
Are you scared? First, before the fight, they had an interview. And in the interview, they were both...
My name is Muhammad Ali. I am the champion. I am the greatest. I will whoop him. I can't lose. And I'm always here to prove I am the greatest. And what you gonna say about that?
You know that fight that you had about with that white man with the mustache, and you knocked him down at the end?
Chuck Rubner, yeah.
Yeah, I think that. And you were fighting with him before they had an interview. You were fighting with him before the thing happened. You said to him, no, he said to you, "I'm gonna mess up your pretty face."
That's what he said.
Right. And then
And my pretty face is not messed up though, is it?
And then you said, when you get into
What are you
boxing,
afraid of? What did I say? When you get into what?
You said, when you get into that ring, you're gonna be asking yourself, why are you here?
Why are you here? How did I get into trouble? All those people looking at me at the other side would put fear in the man.
Right, well, I think that
What do you
sometimes
think?
you have to have confidence.
What are you telling me? I have too much?
No, I think that sometimes you do use, and you say that, like say, I am going to beat him, you know, but it's better than saying, oh, I think I'm going to lose.
But I do beat him.
Right.
Let's go talk.
The Louisville of Ollie's youth was Jim Crow South. It was a place where blacks had their own parks, parts of movie theaters, shops, schools. Life was divided utterly, and African Americans were eliminated from whole realms of life. This was his bruise, his hurt, that informed so much of what came after.
I remember Mrs. Clay telling me once that when Cassius was 4 or 5 years old, they went into a Woolworths and he was thirsty and he wanted a drink of water, and he couldn't have one. And there was really no reason to believe that he would have a life that would differentiate himself from millions of other young black men in the South at that time.
Born in 1942, the older of two brothers, Cassius Clay Jr. grew up in the working-class West End of Louisville in a two-bedroom house at 3302 Grand Avenue.
Muhammad's mother was a very soft-spoken, warm, friendly person. Seemed to care about all the kids in the neighborhood, and perhaps Muhammad inherited some of that from her.
Odessa was a very, very sweet lady. She was real nice. She took care of those boys, and she was real proud of those boys. She was a housewife. I don't remember her going out working. Her husband, Cassius Sr., he was a sign painter, and he'd go around to different churches and paint signs.
When he wasn't painting signs, Cassius Clay Sr. often cruised Louisville's black saloons with an eye out for diversion.
Muhammad Ali's dad was this chesty, outgoing, alcoholic, spent most of his married life chasing women.
He was a drunk, and he was a mean drunk. He was arrested a lot of times for disorderly assault. One night, the police were called there. The father, Cassius, was gone, and Muhammad Ali had a slash in his thigh, obviously from a knife or a razor or something like that. And I talked to the policeman who rolled out to the scene, and he said they didn't want to prosecute. They didn't even want to tell me who did it. He said, I was pretty sure that Cassius Sr. did it. There were some heavy-duty scenes in that house.
Part of what lay beneath his father's erratic behavior was an anger as old as slavery.
The interesting thing about his name, Cassius Clay, is that it comes from a slave owner, but a slave owner who freed the slaves on his plantation and became an abolitionist politician. So in fact, the family had great pride in this name.
Despite the historical honor of the family name, Clay suffered scholastically, finishing high school 376th out of 391 students. He fared no better on the social front.
He wasn't shy, but you knew that he was not, as we used to say, a player. Muhammad had a crush on one of my classmates, and the story has it that he walked her home, and after he walked her home one night, she kissed him on the cheek, and they say he fainted.
Clay came of age when something important was taken from him.
Cassius Clay, 12 years old, had his bicycle stolen. A beautiful red Schwinn, and he was angry, very angry. And he started yelling and screaming how he was going to whoop the next kid he saw that had a red Schwinn and it might be his and da-da-da-da-da. And he wandered into a boxing gym.
Cassius comes rocketing down the stairs. Somebody stole my bike, and I'm going to kill him when I get him. I'm going to fight him. And Joe Martin said, wait a minute. You want to fight? Yeah, I want to fight. And Joe Martin took him under his wing. That was it.
6 years later in Rome, Clay won the Olympic light heavyweight championship. Radiating a new, fun-loving, fresh-faced persona in 1960, he seduced millions and even pursued the elegant Wilma Rudolph. But upon his arrival back in America, he was instantly recast as a second-class citizen.
He was very dissatisfied that, you come all the way back home, you couldn't eat at the lunch counters, you couldn't go to the movies. A lot of places you couldn't even go to the bathroom. And if you did want something to eat, you had to get it to go.
Cassius Clay had a gold medal around his neck, and he goes into a luncheonette for a bowl of soup, and he's refused service. And somebody behind the counter says, do you know who that is? He's the hometown boy. He just won a gold medal. I said, I don't care who he is. Get him out of here.
3.5 years later, Ali gained only a measure of respect by beating heavyweight champ Sonny Liston in Miami. But on May 25, 1965, in Lewiston, Maine, Ali was acknowledged as the rightful champion of the world when he dispatched Liston in the first round.
Second time, the cloak of invincibility was taken away from him. He was not the tough guy no more. Muhammad was his master. Muhammad was the guy that was going to kick his butt, and he did it again.
While most of the fight community grudgingly accepted Ali as a new kind of champion with size, speed, and agility, a significant few remained skeptical of the ease with which he won the rematch. With Liston's ties to the mob, he was suspected of having taken a dive from a right hand that would come to be known as the Phantom Punch.
All this time, Ali's standing over him, and those are the famous photographs where he's saying, "Get up, you bum, nobody will believe this. Get up and fight."
Years later in the Las Vegas casino, I asked Liston, did you go into the tank for that? He said, no. He said, man, that guy was crazy. He said, I didn't want anything to do with him. There was rumors that the Muslims were coming up and they're going to kill Liston. Who needed that? He said, so I get hit with a little light punch and I went down. I wasn't hit. He said, I just didn't want any part of it.
When we return, Ali faces his two toughest opponents, the U.S. government and Joe Frazier.
It's probably the greatest risk that he ever took because, you know, the United States don't play with you when you start dealing with things about your country.
Joe Frazier became the heavyweight champion of the world. But the heavyweight champion of the world, the real guy, was in confinement for about 3 years. Now, these guys have to prove who the real champ is.
Well, champ, do you have a feeling of elation this morning? Sir, do you have a feeling of elation? Are you happy?
Yes, sir. I'm just always happy. I'm not jumping and shouting because I'm used to victory.
There's been a change in you in the last few weeks, especially before this fight. You're usually pretty carefree and gay, and you recite some poetry here and there, and we don't see that now.
Well, I have other things coming up that's a lot more dramatic. The outcome will be than boxing itself. It's a bigger scuffle than the fight itself, and I'm getting conditioned to meet certain things that may come. And I'm just setting my mind on course to meet whatever comes.
Are you referring to this tiff with the draft board?
Yes, sir.
Well, what's your stand on that, champ?
Well, all I see is that, as we say throughout the Muslim world, some 600 million of us say daily that my prayers, in our prayers we say, my prayers, my sacrifices, my life, and my death are all for Allah. I repeat, my prayers, my sacrifices, my life, and my death are all for Allah. And if I thought that going to war would be instrumental in helping 22 million so-called Negroes first receive their freedom, justice, and equality, if I thought going to war would help my people receive their freedom, justice, and equality, you wouldn't have to draft me. I'll go tomorrow.
My conscience won't let me go shoot my brother or some darker people or some poor, hungry people in the mud for big, powerful America and shoot them for what? They never called me nigger. They never lynched me. They never put no dogs on me. They never robbed me of my nationality, raped and killed my mother and father. What, I'm going to shoot them for what? How am I going to shoot them? Them little poor little black people, little babies and children and women. How can I shoot them poor people? Just take me to jail.
Ali more than held his own against students who had a far better formal education than he.
I'm saying you talking about me about some draft, and all of you white boys are breaking your neck to get to Switzerland and Canada and London. I'm not going to help nobody get something my Negroes don't have. If I'm going to die, I'll die now right here fighting you. if I'm gonna die, you my enemy. My enemy is the white people, not Viet Congs or Chinese or Japanese. You my opposer when I want freedom. You my opposer when I want justice. You my opposer when I want equality. You won't even stand up for me in America for my religious beliefs, and you want me to go somewhere and fight, but you won't even stand up for me here at home.
You continue to be unafraid of this man.
Yeah, I'd like to say something right here. You know, Cassius Clay, yes.
Why do you want to say Cassius Clay when Howard Cosell and everybody is calling you Muhammad Ali? Then why you got to be the one of all people whose color to keep saying Cassius Clay?
Howard Cosell is not the one who's going to fight you. I am.
You're making it really hard on yourself now.
Well,
why don't you keep the thing in the sport angle? Why don't you call me my name, man?
Well, what's your name? You told me your name was Cassius Clay a few years ago.
I never told you my name was Cassius Clay. My name is Muhammad Ali, and you will announce it right there in the center of that ring after the fight if you don't do it now.
For the benefit of this broadcast, him, all right?
You just acting just like an old Uncle Tom. Another Floyd Patterson. I'm going to punish you.
Let me tell you something, man. You ain't got no
back off of me.
Don't call me no Uncle Tom.
That's what you are, Uncle Tom.
Why are you going to call me Uncle Tom? I ain't do nothing.
You heard me. Just back off of me.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, as the two contestants prepare for battle right now,
back off of me, man. Back off of me, man.
Another interview has been recorded for posterity as the two gentlemen continue to promote the fight. Perfect, that's it.
Ask not what America will do for you, but what together we can do for the freedom of man.
I have today ordered to Vietnam the Air Mobile Division. Additional forces will be needed later, and they will be sent as requested.
Mr. Muhammad Ali has just refused to be inducted into the United States Armed Forces.
You said you were the people's champion?
Yes, sir.
Do you think that you're acting like a people's champion?
Yes, sir.
When he said, I ain't got nothing against them Viet Cong, they ain't never called me nigger. He meant that, and he meant that sincerely.
I will not go 10,000 miles to help murder another poor people simply to continue the domination of white slave masters over the darker people of the earth.
It is a war that he considers unjust, and his conscience will not allow him to do it. Now, certainly, I would endorse that, I would justify his action, and I would give him my strongest support in his doing it.
There is a substantial segment of society that cheered. There was an equally substantial segment that thought that Ali was not only wrong, but engaged in what amounted to treason.
I don't think the society had any respect for a draft dodger. I don't think they had any respect for any person who shrunk from his duties as a citizen.
This fella they call Clay or Muhammad Ali, whatever he wants to call himself, is a disgrace to the nation.
Maybe this boy has forgotten he's black. Let's remind him who's in charge here.
What happens now to his title? He will doubtless be stripped of it by every state boxing commission in this country and by the World Boxing Association.
In 1967, after 9 title defenses, Ali lost the first round of the biggest fight of his life. But even as his lawyers appealed his conviction, a fundamental shift was taking place in America.
Liberals were getting behind Ali. Anti-war protesters were getting behind Ali.
He spoke for us. I'm a white, middle-class college kid, and that's exactly how I felt.
It was almost as if there was this halo over him and people following willingly. He was the damn Pied Piper.
He could be the hero of the anti-war people. He could be the hero of the black nationalist. He was fluid enough to accept the projections of every group's need without contradicting anyone.
Ali had defied the patriotic precepts of the country by saying, I'm not going to participate in the war effort. He lost 3 years of his ability as a boxer. He lost 3 years of income. But once he had paid the price, even people who disagreed with Ali, Even people who thought this is a big blabbermouth, this guy's a lot of hot air, said, you know what, he paid the price. And anytime an American pays the price, other Americans say, that's my man.
In 1971, the Supreme Court, in a unanimous decision, overturned Ali's conviction. Howard Cosell had been in Ali's corner throughout his ordeal.
When I first put him on boxing, everybody said he doesn't know anything about boxing. Why would you put this guy in boxing? And then he became legendary.
Every once in a while, history does us the favor of bringing together two people who separately make magic, but together they make double magic. Here was this loudmouth, brash, outspoken lawyer from Brooklyn who had been a Little League radio commentator, and here was Ali, who was this brash, outspoken, heavyweight champion of the world whose title had been taken away, who had changed his name. Cosell is the first one to call him Muhammad Ali, tell his story, respect his Muslimism. These two guys who are the object of this intense dislike suddenly become this likable pair.
I'm always confident I whoop all of them.
You're being extremely truculent.
Whatever truculent mean, if that's good, I'm that.
You can't divorce the two. He knew that this kid at the time was somebody special. This was somebody I'm going to cover, and I'm going to cover him hard, and I'm going to cover him over and over again because he's got something special, and we're both going to go to the top together. I don't think he manipulated him, but whenever he could, he got an interview with him. And I think they both played off each other. They made a lot of news together, and I think they had a lot of fun together.
Sit down, Joe. Why you think I'm making? Sit down, Joe. Huh? Sit down quick. Why you think I'm making? The brothers are here. Doing this too? No. Sit down quick, Joe.
Well, we're having a scene, as you can see, and it's hard to tell whether it's clowning or for real between the two fighters.
Howard sat there calmly, like he was doing a fight in the ring. He was calling the fight in the studio.
Joe Frazier is really angry. Muhammad called him ignorant, and he's really angry. I don't think this one is clowning at all.
It was sort of crazy in the control room. Certainly, we never expected that to happen. We never expected them the two of them to get physical. A lot of people felt that it was put on, because their fight was only a few days away and would create some hype. Anybody in the studio that day wouldn't have believed that. They were serious. They were very serious in going at it, especially Joe.
A classic fight between two extraordinary athletes. Joe Frazier's watch came off. There was a wrestling bout on the floor, and we're really very sorry this happened.
Our stagehands and others were trying to separate Ali and Frazier. Ultimately, when they got him separated, Joe got up, bolted out of the studio. That was the last time we saw him for the day.
Joe Frazier is leaving the studio now, and he is deeply upset at Ali calling him ignorant. I'm sorry, Joe. I'm sorry, Joe. We're going to try and get this back, and we'll be back in just one moment.
Monday night, you be on time. I think it certainly spurred their rivalry for the next fight. Joe resented the fight that happened in the studio, resented everything that Ali had said to him. I think in a funny sort of way, Joe had more to prove.
In 1970, Ali's exile ended, and after a pair of tune-up fights, he met 26-0 Joe Frazier in March of the following year in Madison Square Garden.
Ali looked at Frazier as the sellout. Guy had sold out to the white establishment, become champion when Ali couldn't fight.
For Joe Frazier to be a champion, he's got to beat me.
He branded Joe Frazier and Uncle Tom in a way that was very cruel. But it wasn't done by accident. It was done to gain a psychological advantage.
For him to be viewed as a white, sucking Uncle Tom kind of guy was the greatest insult you could give a guy who is nothing but raging black.
That was the setting for the first fight. And it was the most electrifying event that I've ever been at.
The anticipation, two undefeated champions, two champions of the first rank, and Ali coming back to reclaim in many people's minds what was rightly his, but not against some patsy, against Joe Frazier.
His feelings towards Ali in the ring that night were anything but cordial.
I had one focus, the butterfly.
Styles make fights, and there never were two more contrasting styles that would work to give you a great fight than Joe Frazier bobbing in, left hand at work, and Muhammad Ali pinpointing his punches to Frazier's head.
Muhammad Ali, flat on his feet, how to find goal.
The young Muhammad Ali would have run circles around Joe Frazier, but it wasn't the young Ali who got in the ring with Joe.
From the layoff, he lost an incredible amount of sharpness. He lost the quickness and the ability to avoid a punch.
My kid blew the 11th round big. I don't know how the heck he stayed erect. He looked like a ballet dancer, like a pirouette.
In the 15th round, Muhammad Ali went down from a bodacious left hook, his eyes spinning in his head.
And he could have stayed there and been counted out, but he didn't. He got up and took some more beating.
Muhammad Ali has never taken such a battering.
The good news was he learned he could take a punch, and the bad news was he learned he could take a punch.
He didn't feel that he was fighting only for himself. He felt that he was fighting for everybody who believed in him.
March 8, 71, I cried my eyeballs out. Cried my eyeballs. Not just because he lost, but because he symbolized so much. It wasn't about sports. It was about wars, about race, it was about politics, it was about society, it was about generations. And the feeling was that if Ali lost, then we were wrong.
When Muhammad Ali fought George Foreman, it was the first Liston fight all over again. George Foreman had knocked out Joe Frazier.
I've seen people knocked down, but to this day, I've never seen anybody knocked up and then down, like a basketball. And this is Joe Frazier.
Frazier's knees buckled. He is down. He is down for the 4th time in the fight.
Ali looked like he was a fading champion who didn't have the speed anymore, who took a lot of punches, and who was about to get knocked out. My biggest worry is where were we going to take him when he got hurt?
Although he had defeated Joe Frazier in their rematch 9 months earlier, Ali was no longer as sharp as he had been. But what time had stolen from his body, Ali made up for with a fully developed genius for psyching out an opponent.
We were sitting with Jack Dempsey, and George walked in. George started staring at Ali, and Ali got up. He said, Sonny Liston is this when you're a little bitty boy. You think I'm scared of you? You're nothing. I'll whip your butt right here. And Foreman walked away, and Ali sat down, looked at Jack Dempsey. He said, I just won round 1.
But round 1 would have to wait. A cut over Foreman's eye delayed the fight 5 weeks, allowing the challenger to marshal millions.
Muhammad Ali and the people of Zaire entered into a perfect marriage.
They had a rally to see the two fighters. Ali got out on the running track and started calling to people, and he had found out how to say kill him in their language, which was Boumaye.
Muhammad got that Ali Boumaye chant going right from the get-go. He was the hero. The other guy was the enemy. George was the enemy.
So by fight time, I doubt that there were more than a handful of people in Zaire who weren't rooting for Ali.
First round, Ali goes out, he goes up on his toe, bang, hits him with that first shot. Now, what does Foreman do? With the gloves, cuts the ring off. Ali goes back on the ropes.
The whole time we were there, all we did was had sparring partners pressing him to the rope so he could spin this way, spin that way. The whole thing was whatever you do, don't stand still. Don't let this guy stand in front of you.
He hits George. Then he goes back on the ropes. The rope-a-dope. The rope-a-dope. Come on, George. You ain't nothing. Show me something. George is throwing punches. Bang, bang, bang.
Everybody be saying, get on the ropes, Ali. Get on the ropes, bang. Float like a butterfly. Sting like a bee.
We're screaming at him in the corner. And he said, shut up. I know what I'm doing. This guy's not hurting me.
It was a huge, brilliant gamble, but one that could have backfired on him very easily.
I mean, it was just staying on the ropes, being hit.
I did hurt this guy a lot. I hurt him more than a lot. But I've never faced anyone with that kind of bravery before.
George Foreman got exhausted. He missed a lot of shots, and he was catching arms and everything else. So that's what emptied George Foreman's tank, missing them.
I hit him hard in the side. I mean, I got a good shot. And he said, "Is that all you got, George?" And I remember thinking, yep, that's about it.
And he worked over the shoulder.
And not more than 20 minutes after the fight was over, the monsoon hit. And it hit really hard. There was flickering of lightning along the horizon. We all went back in this entourage of cars to the hotels in Kinshasa. And all along the road were the Africans standing in the rain, leaping up and down and shouting, "Allez, Bomaye, Bomaye," thousands and thousands and thousands.
People started coming out, lining the roads just for a look at the Ali motorcade in the hope that maybe he would bless their children.
We pull up to Ali's compound, and there is Ali, just a couple of hours after the greatest victory of his life, and he is sitting on the stoop to his bungalow with about 5 or 6 little kids, and he's doing some magic tricks with a rope.
Give him a kiss. Give him a kiss.
Less than a year later, Ali arrived in the Philippines to defend his title and settle an old score with his nemesis, Joe Frazier.
It will be a killer and a chiller and a thriller when I get the gorilla in Manila.
Manila wasn't about the heavyweight championship of the world. There was something much more important at stake. Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier were fighting for the heavyweight championship of each other. They both understood that whoever won this fight, well, that's who history was going to recognize as the greater fighter.
Frazier's smiling as Ali talks to him.
Really, it was a fight in 3 parts. The first part, Ali is just whipping on Frazier. I mean, he's tagging him, Somehow, in the middle rounds, Frazier comes through. Frazier starts wailing, he cuts off the ring, he gets him on the ropes. He was killing Ali.
Ali tried to regain the psychological edge by looking at him and saying, "Joe Frazier, they told me you were washed up." And Frazier said, "They told you wrong, pretty boy."
Closest to life and death I've ever seen. 2 equally matched fighters at the top of their form with an intense competitive edge on each other, if not dislike, actual hatred, if you will. It didn't seem that you could survive that.
By the 12th round, Ali had regained his edge over Frazier. It was only a question of whether he could last.
It looked like Ali was going to have to quit in the corner because he was getting so beat up. He said, "I feel like I'm dying. This must be what death feels like."
Frazier could not see, and Ali knew what he had to do to win, and he could keep wailing away at will with that jab in his eyes.
Joe came back to the corner at the end of the 14th round, and I said, "It's all over, Joe."
He said, "You can't see," and I know it. I said, "I can visualize it. Don't worry about it." He said, "No." So I said, "Okay." Shut it down.
I think it's going to be over. It's all over.
It was a climax to Ali's career, and he collapsed right on the canvas at that point. He had nothing left to give.
After that fight, I was up in his suite. The blood-red sun was dropping over Manila Bay. He took my hand and moved it across his forehead, and there was just a ridge of bumps. Terrible bumps, and he just said, "Why I do this?"
Ali's a giant. There's no way other fighters can match him. He'll die for this shit. He'll die. I'm not gonna die for that. Ali's a savage. He's an animal. He's a different breed of person. He's not like us.
How would you explain the influence Muhammad Ali had on you?
He had probably one of the greatest and earliest influences on me because my father had boxed a little as a kid, and my grandfather ended that. He said, "You're not going to be a boxer." But my dad was a pretty tough guy. And in the day when they'd have a world title fight, it was only on the radio. So my dad would come up to my brother and I's room, and the three of us would gather around the radio to hear the blow-by-blow of whether it was, and I started doing that really in the days of Ingemar Johansson and Floyd Patterson. And then of course the big ugly bear, Sonny Liston, came along and destroyed Patterson with 2 first-round knockouts and was considered unbeatable. And then along came this young guy called the Louisville Lip, Muhammad Ali, who did a record album called I Am the Greatest. And I used to sit and listen to that album day in and day out. I had it memorized. I still have it today. I can do it today.
Why'd you listen to it so much?
Because he became my hero.
Okay.
And I remember when he was going to fight Liston, nobody picked Cassius to win except me. I said, "Cassius is going to win, Dad." And sure enough, Cassius did win. And he's been my hero since I was probably 9 or 10 years old. I got the chance to spend a day with him when I was governor. It was one of the best days of my life.
What did you guys do during that day?
Hung out. We went to Mohammed's home at the time in Barron Springs, Michigan. I was governor. Well, what led to that was that when I won the governorship and I gave my acceptance speech, no one thought I could win. Just as no one thought Cassius would beat Sonny Liston. And I remember that night, Mohammad Cassius saying, "We shocked the world." So I got up that night and I told the story of Mohammad beating Sonny Liston and how they shocked the world. And I said, "We shocked the world." 2 weeks later, businessman Harvey Mackay came to my office in the lower bowels of the Capitol because Governor Carlson was still governor and we're waiting for the transition to take place. It was later in the afternoon. He had 10 minutes, and I thought, what is this about? And Harvey walked in with a big box, and he set it down on my governor-elect desk. And he said, "I'm here to deliver this to you." And he said, "You better open it." And when I opened it up, there was a pair of red Everlast gloves in it. And it said to Governor Jesse Ventura, "You shocked the world, Muhammad Ali." He had been watching that night on television.
Your son, Tyrell, told me you got pretty emotional with getting that gift.
Oh, yeah. Sits in my office behind glass today.
Why do you think you got so emotional?
Because he's your hero. And I get emotional now. Because he gave up the greatest title in the world, being a man of his conviction. And if I can be half that man, he is the greatest. No, He gave up the title, the most prestigious title in the world, because he refused to go to war. And they would have given him a pat job. All he did was walk around doing exhibitions, but he knew if he agreed to do that, more young black people would be sent off to a war he was against. And he stood up and said, I'll give up the greatest title in the world because I will be a man of conviction.
So it should be no surprise to anyone that when Ali heard of a man ready to jump to his death a few blocks away, he did not hesitate. He did not ask if he was the right man for the job, or if he could do anything to help. What he did do was drive at top speed the wrong way down the block, and then rush into the building to try and talk the man down. The man, who the papers came to refer to simply as Joe, had been up on the ledge for hours. While Joe clearly struggled with paranoid, irrational delusions, they seemed to be mixed in with some very real, very relatable problems shared by many. Joe said that he was no good, that he couldn't find a job, that his parents didn't love him, that nobody loved him. Some in the crowd seemed to agree, encouraging the young man to jump. The last thing Joe expected at that moment was Muhammad Ali to show up and introduce himself. In fact, Joe couldn't believe the voice he heard was Ali, so Ali leaned over the edge to prove it was really him. "Why would you worry about me?" asked Joe. "I'm a nobody." Ali told him that he wasn't a nobody. "You're my brother," he said, "and I love you. I couldn't lie to my brother. I just want to help you." Ali spent several minutes talking to the man, but it was anyone's guess if he was making progress. Until, 20 minutes later, the unthinkable happened. Ali succeeded, finally talking Joe down and cautiously pulling him from the ledge into a hug. Ali walked Joe outside, then drove him to the station in his Rolls Royce. He even rode with Joe in the police car that took him to the psychiatric hospital. Ali told reporters that he was committed to helping Joe get through his problems. But Ali was uncharacteristically quiet about the things he did to help others. And the rest of the story is lost to time.
New York's most famous boxing gym also doubles as a shrine to Muhammad Ali. He trained at Gleason's in the 1960s, where his supersized charisma made him an electrifying presence. But it's not just as a megastar that they remember him here. It's also as a friend.
I mean, he would do anything. He would do anything for you. He'd help you as much as he can. He'd give you the shirt off his back. He's just was that nice of a guy. He's just a nice person, period. And he stopped and talked to anybody. He'll stop. He'll not only stop and talk to the guy standing in the corner with the suit and tie on. He'll talk to the bum that's laying on the ground, half drunk or half dead. He'll stop and talk. You know what? If you start talking to him, he'll talk to you. One thing about Muhammad Ali, he loved to talk.
His star power could fill arenas the size of Madison Square Garden 100 times over. But it was the intimacy that photographer Michael Gaffney recalls. He spent a year on the road with Ali in the late 1970s and has special memories of a trip to South America, where Ali toured hospitals filled with polio victims and lent a helping hand to the poor.
Every day that we were there were beggars lined up in the hallway. And he would he gave each one of them a $100 bill. And I said, "Champ, why are you doing that?" And he said, "Because $100 here is worth $10,000 at home." And that was him.
In 1984, Muhammad Ali was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. At 42, the greatest faced a future of diminishing physical ability. But over the decades, he soldiered on, displaying a level of grace and simple humanity that all the words and rhymes could not surpass.
If you had told somebody in 1968 that in 1996 Muhammad Ali would be the most beloved individual on earth, and the mere sight of him holding an Olympic torch would bring people to tears, you'd won a lot of bets. You'd won a lot of bets.
We were both
was on the dais at an awards dinner from the Boxing Writers Association. He took a glass and a felt tip pen and he traced around the glass so he had a circle, and then he drew in continents. And then he nudged me and he pointed at it and he said, "I used to be champion of all that." And then in the middle of everybody else's speeches, he fell asleep.
He doesn't feel sorry for himself, and there's no reason for anybody else to feel sorry for him.
He lives a very satisfied life. He does exactly what he wants to do when he wants to do it. God has blessed him many times over and continues to bless him, so there's nothing for him not to be happy about.
A little boy came to the camp to meet Ali. Ali looked at the boy. "Why do you wear a skull cap?" The boy said, "Ali, I got cancer. I have chemo. I lost all my hair." Ali hugged the boy, and Ali told the little boy, "I'm going to beat George Foreman, and you're going to beat cancer." 2 weeks later, Ali and I went down to see the boy. We heard he was in bad shape. And when we walked in, Ali said, "I told you I'm going to beat George Foreman, and you're going to beat cancer." And the little boy looked Ali in the eyes with his big blue eyes, and he said, "No, champ, I'm going to meet God, and I'm going to tell him I know you."
He called himself the greatest, and then proved it to the entire world. He was a master at what is called the sweet science, the brutal and sometimes beautiful art of boxing. Heavyweight champion at just 22 years old, he wrote his own rules, in the ring and in his life, infuriating his critics, baffling his opponents, and riveting millions of fans. At the height of the civil rights movement, he joined a separatist religious sect whose leader would, for a time, dominate both his personal life and his boxing career. He spoke his mind and stood on principle, even when it cost him his livelihood. He redefined black manhood, yet belittled his greatest rival using the racist language of the Jim Crow South in which he had been raised. Banished for his beliefs, he returned to boxing an underdog, reclaimed his title twice, and became the most famous man on earth. He craved adulation his whole life, seeking crowds on street corners, in hotel lobbies, on airport tarmacs, everywhere he went, and reveled in the uninhibited joy he brought each adoring fan. He earned a massive fortune, spent it freely, and gave generously to family, friends, even strangers, anyone in need. Service to others, he often said, is the rent you pay for your room here on earth. Even after his body began to betray him and his brain had absorbed too many blows, he fought on, unable to go without the attention and drama that accompanied each bout. Later, slowed and silenced by a cruel and crippling disease, he found refuge in his faith, becoming a symbol of peace and hope on every continent. Muhammad Ali was, the novelist Norman Mailer wrote, the very spirit of the 20th century.
I'm always going to be one black one who got big on your white televisions, on your white newspapers, on your satellites, $1 million checks, and still look you in your face and tell you the truth and 100% stay with and represent my people and not leave them and sell them out because I'm rich and stay with them. That was my purpose. I'm here and I'm showing the world that you can be here and still free and stay yourself and get respect from the world.